Thanks, Chris. Yeah, that was a short intro. So I'm responsible for Semtech's wireless and sensing product group. And so obviously that includes LoRa. It also includes a couple of other wireless products and some related technologies around power and capacitive sensing. I'm very excited to be here today. I can't believe this event is incredible. I didn't actually come to the event last year, but to pull this together with a team of 13 people, with all of these folks in attendance, is nothing short of remarkable. I want to talk today about the opportunity ahead of all of us to take LoRa and really realize the promise of the IoT, because in many ways I think that that's exactly what LoRaWAN represents. Given that I'm the opener, I was going to start with death by numbers, because I thought that that would really wake people up and get you enthused about the day ahead. And at least you'll be much more excited by the following speakers than anything I've got to say. But joking aside, I wanted to step back a little bit and look at where we are as an industry, where we've been, and really where we're going. And I'd like to start with a number, 50 billion. Now, I'm sure many of you remember that that was a forecast given by Ericsson CEO Hans Vestberg back in, it was about 2011, I think. And it was his forecast of how many connected devices would be deployed by 2020. Now, you could argue that the IoT is a space that is, I would say, characterized by some very bullish views of how big the market is. Everything from IBM's slightly more bullish forecast of a world of 1 trillion connected devices. We were meant to get to that by 2015, and the forecast was only given in 2010, through to the perhaps more realistic view that our friends at Gartner put together in 2015, which predicted a mere 20 billion devices by 2020. My point is not really to compare those forecasts. I mean, by their very nature, forecasts tend to be wrong. You know, it's hard to predict the future, after all. It's more to say, however you look at the world in which we work, it's an enormous one. And we're really only just at the beginning. And if you look at the opportunity ahead of all of us, we have a lot of work to do, obviously. And actually, if we look around in the folks at this room and you say conservatively, let's say 50% of those 50 billion devices are LoRa addressable, that means each of us, I think, has to connect about 15 million devices by 2020. So I think we've got some work to do. So how's all of this going to happen? Well, first of all, you're going to need access to a network. Now, today, you might be in an area that's covered by a public LoRa network. And there are around 100 operators today who offer coverage that reaches an estimated billion people on the face of the planet. And of course, all of the things around those billion people as well. If you're outside one of those coverage areas, then you might be in an area that's covered by a private LoRaWAN network. And it's extremely hard to estimate just how many of those there are, but tens upon tens of thousands. And if you're not in one of those areas, then of course you could just go buy a gateway or use the mini hub that you'll get this afternoon and connect it to TTN and join the currently 6,000 gateways that are already connected to the network. And when you think about it in many ways, that's the beauty of LoRa. Network coverage, where you want it, when you need it, quick and easy. No reliance on traditional network operators, no tariff to pay, free, ready to go. And it's this ease of deployment that's driven the incredible growth that we've seen in LoRaWAN over the course of the last 3 years. 200% growth year on year on year in the number of gateways that are deployed, which I would guess probably makes LoRaWAN, if not the most, certainly amongst the most rapidly deployed wireless technologies that we've seen so far. And 80 million? 80 million is the estimated number of connected devices that are deployed today. You could argue that that number is comparatively small compared to all the billions that we've been talking about. And I guess it is, but it's been growing very rapidly as well. And you could also argue, for those of you in the room who've come to this event because you already build LoRaWAN-based solutions, or because you're here to learn more as a developer, a solution provider, or a systems integrator, that you're most definitely in the right place at the right time. And you're not alone. As the video showed you this morning, there are already 60,000 developers connected to the TTN network, which makes it, I think, by far and away the largest developer ecosystem in LoRaWAN and one of the largest developer ecosystems in the IoT as a whole. And, of course, beyond that, there are tens upon tens of thousands of other developers spread across systems integrators, small solution providers, enterprises, folks in their garage who spend their lives building solutions that leverage LoRaWAN technology. Now, when I said 15 million devices each, you could kind of think, well, if we're one of 60,000, then actually it only means we have to connect a little shy of 500,000 devices each in the course of the next 2 years. So I'm sure that's quite a relief for everybody. So what are these solutions connecting? What are the devices? Now, they range from, I would say, the roots of LoRaWAN in utilities, around utility metering. But that's also extended to cover solutions like power grid management to ensure efficiency in the operation of electricity grids, of gas grids, of water grids, to detect leaks, all the way through to sensing when disaster is about to strike, sensing when electricity poles are going to fall over. There are a range of solutions, and you can see many of them in the hall today, for smart city, which focus on improving the way that people live in the urban environment, whether that's through the management of systems that consume energy, like street lighting, whether it's through traffic control, environmental monitoring. And of course, there are smart home and building applications that, again, range from managing the way in which we consume energy, managing the occupancy and the way that we utilize spaces, all the way through to protecting the safety of individuals within that built environment, whether those individuals are children or providing care services for the elderly to ensure that we know where they are. Through to connected insurance. And I think there's a couple of solutions on display here today, actually, that look at leak detection, leak prevention, but also safe driving and how people travel through this world to reduce the danger of accident and to reflect that reduction in insurance reductions. And then, of course, there's logistics and transportation. In many ways, one of the use cases that I think LoRa was kind of made for. Tracking parcels through the entirety of a supply chain, ensuring product quality, ensuring worker safety throughout the process of manufacturing the goods and services that we consume. Through to agriculture, whether it's tracking cows or turtles or rhinos even, to understand where animals are and how they're moving through the environment. Through to conserving the use of pesticides, of fertilizers, etc., really managing the impact that we're having on the environment through normal agricultural activities, reducing essentially the pollution that we're leaving behind us. And so when you look at all of these solutions, they really boil down to one thing. And when you look at what customers are looking for, what they're looking for is return on investment. And if you look at where we are as an ecosystem today, and you compare back to even just a year ago to the TTN event last year, what you see in this hall today is solutions. And a year or so before, you saw technology. And I think that's a reflection of the market maturing, of this community growing and really starting to focus on what customers need and generating that return. As I said, whether that return is in the form of greater efficiency through the course of a supply chain or a manufacturing process, greater safety, or lesser impact on the environment in which we live. Now, like all things, delivering ROI rapidly, simple to say, but it's actually extremely complex to do. And when you look at what needs to be in place, and when we talk to customers and say, hey, what's missing? How can we help? How can we move things more rapidly forward? They tend to say the same things. They say reliability. They want to know that the solution that they put in place is just going to work. And it's going to work for a very long time. And the IoT, I think, in comparison to other waves of technology, is very much distinguished by the fact that we're not talking about a year or 2 years. We're talking about 10, 15, 20, 30 years that these solutions are going to be in place, monitoring the process that they sit upon, tracking the animal, etc. And that means that the solutions that we build must, above all else, be reliable, be dependable. They want compatibility. They want to know that they can integrate a solution readily into the other systems and capabilities they have. And again, I think that's a reflection of the customer maturing as well. I mean, I've been in this space like most of you for a long time. And I think maybe 5 years ago, 6 years ago, I spent a lot of time with customers kind of building experiments. They were trying to investigate and trying to explore the value that IoT could bring. And in those days, having a standalone solution was kind of okay. Actually, in many ways, it was preferred. Today, this conversation has shifted. And actually, the conversation, the person you're speaking to in a customer has often changed. Where previously we were very engaged in the IT space, the CTO space, increasingly the engagement is with the COO, the CFO, and what they're looking for is business results. And that means that if they're going to leverage LoRa, which after all is just a part of the jigsaw, and if they're going to leverage an IoT solution based on LoRa, which albeit a bigger part of the jigsaw is just part of the jigsaw, that jigsaw better fit together. They better be able to integrate the system that they have tracking their manufacturing process into their stock ordering and parts ordering system. They better be able to integrate it into their customer management system. And so compatibility is really critical. They want choice. Now, if the last 30 years in IT has taught us anything, and you could argue that Microsoft was definitely at the front of this, customers don't want to be tied in. They don't want vendor lock-in. They don't want to have one supplier of a solution that's end-to-end, that they can only ever buy from that supplier, particularly in the emerging stages of an industry. You know, we are mostly small to medium-sized companies. We're starting out, and we're not at scale. And so in those sorts of circumstances, the big Fortune 500 companies who are now placing a bet on LoRaWAN need to understand that they have choice, that they have diversity, that they can choose multiple suppliers for any given solution. And again, that means compatibility, and that means interoperability. And I think as an industry, that's something that we ignore at our peril. And they want supportability. They want to be able to take the resources that they have today and support and grow the solutions that they're implementing, much in the same way that they want to manage the other core systems that they have in place within their businesses. They want to maintain the solution using the people that they have today. And those people aren't embedded developers. They aren't hardware developers. They certainly aren't RF engineers. They're typically generalist enterprise or business developers, maybe mobile application specialists, increasingly cloud application developers. And so it's critical that the solutions that we build are accessible to that audience, that we design out the skill that we have, essentially, and make the solution simple and easy to use. And most of all, what they're looking for is a low total cost of ownership. That the solution that they put in place, very often with LoRaWAN, is focused on the little things. It's focused on understanding the whereabouts of many, many assets. And providing those solutions in a cost-effective way is one of the things that LoRaWAN is ideally suited for. And most of all, they want things to be simple. Simple and easy. And obviously, we understand that for you, the folks who really at the end of the day are driving innovation in the marketplace with your customers and partners, simple is what you spend a long time building. So, what is Semtech actually going to do to help you do this? That would be a good question, I think. Firstly, we're going to focus. We're going to focus on driving demand around the use cases where LoRaWAN is truly differentiated, using the marketing channels that we have to drive awareness and to really focus on understanding ROI. And that's really, as I said, at the moment, we're maturing from a market which was very focused on technology and how stuff was done to a customer who's very focused on the return that they're going to generate. And explaining to customers how LoRaWAN can really enable their process improvement or their cost reduction or their worker safety is a very key role that we see as partly our responsibility to take that on. So what you'll see going forward, and you've probably seen over the course of the last 6 months or so, is an increasing focus on core use cases and pushing messages through press, but increasingly going forward through a developer ecosystem that we'll be launching later this year, to start reaching out into the ecosystem and driving awareness. The number of times I speak to a customer and they don't understand what LoRa is, or they've never heard of it, and when you explain to them, they are, oh, wow, okay, that would actually solve a problem. Now, the frequency with that is getting lower and lower. I mean, month by month, awareness is growing. But it's critical that we collectively drive an understanding of the value that the solutions you build can generate for the customers that you target. Secondly, we're focusing on really driving a better understanding of needs. You're critical in that. Understanding the problems that you encounter and the problems that you're solving for your customers are critical in helping us ensure that we're building better solutions for those requirements. We spend a lot of time with end customers, equally trying to understand the problems of your customer to ensure that the tools and services that we're building for you actually get you there more rapidly. And I think we see it very much as our responsibility to make LoRa the easiest tool to use in the toolbox. And we recognize that a lot of you, in many customer situations, there's a choice between different networking technologies. There's emergent NB-IoT, there's traditional cellular, satellite, etc. And I think that from our perspective, in many ways, I mean, we and I think a lot of us think that LoRaWAN is very differentiated as a technology, and many reasons why you could argue that's the case. And that's great. But if it's the best technology and the easiest to use, I think that's a winning combination. And that's something that we focus a lot of our time upon. We spend a lot of our time growing the ecosystem as well, spending a lot of time focusing particularly on systems integrators, because I think in any technology market where you have the diversity of supply that we have, the multiple choices of solution, and by definition, the IoT, unlike any other technology space, I mean, try and count the number of use cases. When you get past 10,000 or so, let me know, because there is such a broad range of problems that we are solving that it's baffling for customers. And when they're in that situation, who do they turn to? They don't turn to us. Often they turn to folks in the audience, and they also turn to the systems integrators who've helped guide them through previous waves of change. And so reaching out to those systems integrators, educating them on the benefits that LoRa can create for their business, and bringing them into the ecosystem is something that we're very actively focused on today, particularly focusing on the use cases that we're promoting, and I talked through those on the prior page. We're also very focused on ensuring reliability, compatibility, and choice. And the way that we do that is mostly through working with the LoRa Alliance, with TTN, to ensure that we're putting in place or supporting strong certification processes, which are also easy and simple to follow, so that we can guarantee to customers that there is compatibility, that there is reliability, that when they install a solution, it will be there in 10 or 15 years' time, and it will be functioning just the same way as the day that they implemented it. And all of that focus is really driven by one goal. It's about shortening the sales cycle for you. Because if customers understand the return that they can generate from a solution, if they are confident about the compatibility and reliability of the technology that you're proposing, then the time that you spend talking through technology, the time that you spend demonstrating and building POCs that really just show the technology works, and the more time you spend building POCs that show this is the value that you can generate, with a customer who already understands that value because they've already been reading about the return that others in their industry have generated from the sorts of solutions that you're building, the shorter the sales cycle becomes. In IoT in general, the sales cycle tends to be 18, 24 months, sometimes longer. I've had projects that took years upon years. I mean, when you got there in the end, it was worth it, but it took an awful long time to work through the process. And frankly, that's hurting a lot of us. It's hurting a lot of the people in the ecosystem. You're out there building solutions, and that needs to be a smoother process. And our second focus, and I think this is particularly relevant to the folks in the room, is really on simplifying the development process, making it easier for you to build the solutions that you or your customers need. more rapidly, more flexibly, and much, much more simply. And we shared a bunch of what we're doing yesterday. Nicola talked through some of the areas that we've been spending the last few months working on. There'll be more to come in the coming months, and you'll have been hearing through some of the workshops that we've been participating in, the investments that we're making. I would emphasize, though, tell us what you need. It's our job to deliver tools to you. If we understand the problems that you're encountering, if we understand the friction, the issues that you're encountering with the technologies, the tools that we provide, we'll fix them. It's our job to provide tools to the ecosystem. It's our job to make your lives easier. What we'll be focusing on in the coming few months is really up-leveling the developer training and the tools and the building blocks that we provide. We talked about some of those in the course of the last day and in the course of the last couple of weeks. Basic Mac, basic packet forwarder, providing chunks of code that mean that you don't have to go and figure out how to build firmware over-the-air update. You can take those code blocks and use them as you will, and we're going to continue trying to identify areas where we can just give the building block and actually allow you to focus more of your time on figuring out your customer's problem and how you solve it, rather than figuring out how to work with the technology that we provide. We're very focused on reducing complexity of hardware. I think that we all know that hardware is hard, and that's always the adage that's been said. It shouldn't be. If we're going to achieve 50 billion or 1 trillion or however many it turns out being, the developers who build those solutions aren't going to look like a lot of the folks in this room. They're not going to be hardware specialists. They're not going to be RF engineers. They're going to be mobile application developers, and they're going to be cloud application developers. And so if we can abstract away some of the complexity of working at the hardware layer through innovations like soft modem, then we make it easier for people to build solutions. And overall, in terms of solution development, if we can take areas like building multimodal location services and turn those into simple, cost-effective cloud services that you can just leverage, it's those basic building blocks that just have to be there for you to build the solutions that deliver value. Knowing the physical location of an object is a basic ingredient. You just have to know it if you're going to then build an application that takes that data and builds more value, that tracks the cow, that tracks the asset, that understands the process efficiency of the factory. And finally, the focus is in all of this around making it simpler, easier, and faster to build LoRa-based solutions so that you folks can get on with what matters, finding out what your customers need and delivering solutions that answer their problems. Thank you. Questions, please.
Well, thank you very much, Alistair. I have to admit,
I finished 7 minutes ahead. That's a record for me.
Yes, that's a record. And also my compliments for the most simple and focused PowerPoint I've ever seen in my life.
Simple and focused. Yeah, simple.
Yeah, very focused. Questions, ladies and gentlemen? Yeah, it's still early in the morning. Nobody? Oh, I guess it was all clear.
I can't believe that from 25 words I've answered all the questions in the audience. That's impossible.
You could have. Yes, yes, yes. Okay, well, I guess that's it. Thank you very much, Alistair Fulton.
Thank you.